Hi, welcome. Okay, sorry about that. In the previous live, I wasn't able to breathe very well, so I'm back. I'm much better now. Okay, I think you can hear me. There we go. Perfect. Okay, there's always something, but thank you for sticking by and bearing with me. I appreciate that. Okay, so I was sharing all about using advanced vocabulary and how we can speak with confidence in any situation, even if you can't breathe. Okay, so I would love to know, where are you joining from? Let me know. I'm currently in England. I think another problem is it's very hot inside the house and very cold outside at the moment. So let me know, where are you? How is it where you are? Is it very hot? Is it very cold? Let me know. So welcome for those that are joining. Let me know where you are. Okay. So in this live session, I'm going to be sharing with you different strategies of how you can use vocabulary to feel more confident and fluent. Now, one thing is the power of context. So when you master vocabulary in context, something incredible happens. It means that instead of fumbling for your words, you have the tools to communicate your thoughts with clarity. For example, imagine you're in a meeting and you can use phrases and vocabulary without hesitating. You use different phrases like, let's break down this process step by step, or I'd like to follow up on our earlier discussion. These phrases make you sound more polished and polite, and you're in more of a flow when you're speaking. And that's because you're learning it in a particular context. Now, another thing is you're able to engage in conversations without overthinking. And for example, I know that sometimes when it comes to speaking another language, like Spanish for me, in my mind, it takes longer, or it can catch up of what I'm saying. So it might be that I pause and I'm trying to find the one right word. Sometimes when that happens, you might not say anything at all. And that can really hold you back, especially if it's in your career or if you want to connect with others in a conversation. Learning vocabulary contextually reduces this hesitation because you've already practiced how and when to use the right words in that situation. It's like muscle memory. The more you use it, the less you have to think about it. Also, when you learn in context, you can feel more fluent in a particular setting, in a professional and personal setting. Fluency is more than just being understood. It is also how you feel. So it's about feeling natural in your intentions. So whether you're networking at a professional event or talking with friends over coffee, the right vocabulary makes communication effortless. I want to share a little bit around why this particular framework works. So the framework is being able to use vocabulary and learn vocabulary in the context. We're not just memorizing definitions. We're paying attention to how the words are actually used in a conversation, in emails, in movies, and being able to use them in the right situation. Now, an example I can give is the phrasal verb to break down. To break down, when it comes to a car, means something completely different. So the car broke down versus if I'm talking about a report. If I want to say, let me break down the results for you, breakdown has two meanings in this situation. If a car breaks down, it stops working. But if you say to break down the results for you, it means I'm making it more simple, I'm simplifying. It's easier for you to understand, putting it into smaller pieces. So The next part is you want to use vocabulary immediately. The faster you use a new word or phrases, the more likely it is to stick. So try using language in a sentence, a work email, or even a quick text. And then also you want to repeat it naturally over time. You don't need to drill the same words over and over again, but instead look for ways to use it in your daily life, like in meetings, casual conversations, or if you're journaling, or even on social media. So these strategies are simple but incredibly effective. And if you start applying them today, you'll see how quickly they can help to transform your ability to remember and use new words. Okay, so this framework is really the beauty of the approach I teach. And it's not about adding more vocabulary, more words, more language, which is very overwhelming because it could mean you have hundreds of thousands of phrasal verbs to learn in English. And I don't want you to do that. And you don't need to do that. Instead of overwhelming yourself, what you can do is zero in on the words and phrases that matter most for your life and your goals. For instance, if you're preparing for a presentation, if you're mastering terms like outline, summarize, highlight, it will have a bigger impact than memorizing vocabulary that's not related to your job or to the goal that you have. The next thing is real life application. So when you use the language in a very specific context, it leads to long-term results. Vocabulary learned in isolation, which means you just learn by looking at books or you're looking at your notebooks and you're learning one particular word. That's not actually how we need to learn vocabulary. When you do that, it's often forgotten. But when you practice words in a particular context, like in meetings or in a very specific conversation, they will stick. So instead of trying to memorize, okay, to put off, what does that mean? If you're using it immediately in a sentence, we'll have to put off the meeting until next week. It's like, oh, we need to delay the meeting. By doing that in a particular situation and using it in real life situation, real life application, is going to help you to remember that vocabulary. Another thing is you can gain confidence through simplicity. Now, working with many of my clients in the past, and even now, this is something that's always a, wow, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Simplifying your learning process allows you to focus on what's important. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from mastering the essentials and doing them well. Then once you master the essentials, by all means, you can learn more advanced language and very intricate language that might be helpful, especially for your job role. But really, it's sometimes, I want to sound more sophisticated, or I want to sound more American or more British or more this, more that. But really, we want to be able to communicate in a way that feels comfortable for you. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from mastering the essentials and using them well. So when I first started learning Spanish, I was stuck in this endless cycle of trying to memorize as many words as possible. The same when I learned Italian, the same when I learned Arabic, the same when I learned German. I thought that the more words that I learned, the more vocabulary, then I would sound more fluent and I would become more fluent, which to some extent, that's true. You need the vocabulary to speak to someone. But having that vocabulary doesn't mean you're fluent. And that's a huge realization for myself when I first started, before I ever really investigated linguistics and studied my master's degree. I thought that the more words I knew, the more fluent I would become. But when I tried to speak and use the language, even though I knew the language, I would freeze. And it wasn't until I shifted my focus to contextual learning, listening to how the language is used in these very specific situations and practicing them in real life situations, that everything started to click. So instead of trying to learn 20 new verbs in a day, I focused on the key phrases for those situations that I would be using in my daily life. And using those phrases repeatedly gave me more confidence. And the more I practiced them, the easier it became to put the sentences together more naturally. And of course, I made mistakes. And I had more confidence of saying the phrases, even if I said them wrong, because I knew what to say. And then making those mistakes helped me to learn even more. So one thing is, well, why vocabulary? Why are vocabulary and fluency so linked? And fluency isn't just about grammar or pronunciation. It does include those things, but it's also about flow. Now, the right vocabulary helps you to fill in the gaps naturally and express yourself more confidently and connect with others authentically. So while you focus on learning vocabulary in a structured and contextual way, you'll find that fluency feels more achievable and confidence will start to soar. You'll feel, okay, yeah, I can do this. I have these phrases. I know what to say in this very specific situation, and I'm using it in those contexts. I'm using it as soon as I learn it, and naturally over time, I don't need to drill those words. Instead, I'm able to use them in my daily life, or know when I can use this language in these very particular situations. Okay, so if you're watching the replay, or if you have any questions about this, make sure or feel free to ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer anything around how to learn vocabulary and how I can best support you. So I've shared with you today some different strategies of how you can remember vocabulary, how can you use vocabulary more confidently in very specific situations, and really any situation, and how it's not just about memorizing, but learning in context, and why it's so key to fluency. So let me see if we have any questions here. I'd love to know, what's your biggest challenge with English fluency? So maybe you can let me know, what is your biggest challenge with English fluency? So is it number one, I know the words, but I freeze when it's time to speak. So I have the words, but when it's time to use English, I don't say anything. My brain stops working. Or is it two, I feel like I forget new vocabulary as soon as I learn it. So I try to learn, I'm studying, but I always forget everything. Or maybe you feel like you have a good level of English, but you can't find the right words in a professional situation. I'd love to know what it is that you are finding the most challenging. What's your biggest challenge with English fluency? Let me know. So I want to share something quite funny. And a while back, I was asked, can't you just send me a guide with every phrasal verb in English? And that I'll be done. I could just read the guide. And I do that. I do send different guides and lots of free content to my community. And I thought, well, that would be wonderful. And I love a good challenge. But I don't think they realized that there are around 100,000 phrasal verbs alone in English. That's just phrasal verbs. 100,000. And you know what? It would be wonderful to have that all in a book that you could just insert and remember. But like I said, it's not just about knowing the words and having the language. It's really about knowing contextually when to use it. And it's just not enough. It's just not enough to know the language. Well, why? Because learning phrasal verbs and vocabulary isn't about memorizing massive lists. It's about knowing how to use the language in a real life situation. For example, one of my students this was a while ago, that they could memorize a list of vocabulary and they would be good. They would sound fluent. They would know what to say. So I remember that she told me she organized these flashcards with phrasal verbs and the language she could use. But when it came time to use her language at work, she froze. And I know I did the same thing as a child when I learned Italian and Spanish. I would write down long lists of all the language that I needed. The problem wasn't dedication. The problem isn't motivation. It was the approach that you have. And once I worked with my student and started focusing on how you can use the language in the very specific real life situations, that's when everything can change for you. Because suddenly, instead of freezing, you have the language to use in the meeting or in the presentation or in the interview that you have. So a few things. What is the key when it comes to mastering language and vocabulary and phrasal verbs? There are two simple things. The first is to focus on the context. So it's not just definitions. Don't focus just on the particular phrasal verb, like we looked at breakdown or breakthrough means. You need to learn how they're used. Like I said, the car broke down on the way to the meeting. The car broke down, it stopped working. Whereas after hours of brainstorming, we finally broke through the problem. That means we're able to resolve the problem and find a solution. So you can practice using them in the specific situations related to your life or your work. And that will allow you to create the connections in your brain and consolidate your learning. So the next step is also to learn in smaller chunks. And I definitely made this mistake of cramming vocabulary. And it can work if you have an exam. But our life isn't an exam. So that's the only time that this method would really work. And that is what you want to do instead, is to learn in small chunks. So you want to learn one or two different phrases at a time for a very specific situation. And that way you're not overwhelming yourself with lists of vocabulary. For example, take off or put off and all of the different phrasal verbs, for example, that I share. When you use them throughout your day, even just thinking out loud, it can also help. And I think an important thing to remember is that phrasal verbs aren't just about knowing the words, and that's not just phrasal verbs, really any vocabulary language that you learn. It's about knowing how to use the language naturally. So after the whole, can you just send me or create a guide with every single phrasal verb, all the vocabulary that I need? I can't believe, really, there's 100,000 phrasal verbs in English. I realized something really important. And if you're not focusing, this is really important. And that is, most people don't need more vocabulary. They don't need more phrasal verbs or to learn more words. And what they really need is a simple, effective way to learn and use the ones that they already know. And this hit me hard because I see so many of my students falling into the same trap of memorizing vocabulary or feeling like they have to know everything, whether it's grammar, vocabulary, to sound fluent, and freezing when it's time to use the language that they have in real life conversations. They would say, well, I'm fluent in here, but what comes out of here is not the same. That sounds familiar. I knew that I had to break this cycle. So that's when I developed the particular framework that I share. It's simple and it's really practical. The first is, like I said, to learn in context. We want to focus and really focus on real life situations. The real power comes from understanding how phrasal verbs are used in real situations. Like I said, the car broke down on my way to work. Our team had to break down the report into smaller sections to understand it. As you can see here, breakdown has different meanings depending on the context. So this really matters because context creates meaning. Without it, a phrasal verb is just another abstract word that's hard to remember, and it will stick better. When you associate the particular phrasal verb with the real life scenario, it's going to be easier to remember and use it again later. Another thing that I mentioned is we want to use the vocabulary immediately. Once you've learned the phrasal verb or the vocabulary in a particular context, we don't want to just leave it in our notebook or in our memory bank. You need to use it as soon as possible. And here's why. Your brain solidifies new information faster when it's applied actively. So this will help you to also overcome the awkward stage of when you learn new vocabulary. If you use it right away, you will start to be able to feel more comfortable doing it. Maybe at first, not so comfortable, but the more you do it, the more easier it will become. So for example, you might want to write it in an email or using in a meeting, or even practice out loud. Even if it's just in front of a mirror or during your commute when you're driving your car, you can say it out loud. And it might feel a little bit awkward at first, but trust me, it works. And then we also want to repeat it naturally. The magic of repetition happens when it's natural and unforced. So repetition is important, but not when we're memorizing and just repeating words from a list. You really want to look for opportunities to use the vocabulary organically over the next few days when you're learning it. So that might be you're using it in conversations, in meetings, in emails. And another thing is you will start to pay attention and hear that vocabulary being used in movies, podcasts, books, even on social media. So, for example, breakdown, you might start to hear that being used and you will see it on social media, on different posts. You might see it also in movies and in the language and in the content that you're learning as well. So that can really be helpful to see it organically in a particular context. Or if you're using English at work, you might hear your colleagues using particular phrases as well over and over again. And if you do, you don't want to just hear them. You want to start implementing them and practicing them too. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. Okay, let me know if you do. Yeah, so I wanted to share, well, why should you listen to me? and really, this framework isn't something that I just teach. It's something that I have lived myself. So I didn't just find this method somewhere. It came from years of trial and error, both as a language learner myself and later as a fluency coach. So when I first started learning Spanish and Italian, as I said, I've learned many languages in the past, I thought memorizing vocabulary was the key to fluency. And I would spend hours and hours cramming words, but when it came to use them in the conversation, my mind would go blank. I would just forget everything. It's just like, what's happened? Why can't I remember those words? And I felt so frustrated and stuck. And honestly, I started to doubt if I would ever become fluent or even be able to say a word in Spanish or Italian with anybody, because it really lowered my confidence as well. But I learned that fluency isn't about knowing all the words. It's about knowing how to use the right ones in the right context. So when I was studying for my master's in applied linguistics and second language acquisition at the University of Oxford, I discovered how powerful it is to learn contextually, how powerful it is when you hear the language in real life. And I really wish I'd known this earlier. It would have saved me a lot of time and headache when I was learning Spanish and Italian. I guess I've learned Arabic and German and a few other languages, not fluently. But I remember thinking, okay, I need to remember these lists of vocabulary. And I was thinking, well, why isn't it working? I have the language. Even if I could remember the language, I wasn't able to use it when I needed to use it most. When I was talking to real life people, when I was visiting those countries, or even speaking to people when they come to England, my own students, for example. And like I said, I'd learned that fluency isn't about knowing all the words. It's about knowing how to use the right ones in the right context. If only I'd focused on learning in context, using it immediately, and repeating it naturally, I would have saved myself so much time and energy. So I stopped focusing on memorization. That's a difficult word, memorization. And I started focusing on the real life situations. So I would hear a new phrase in a conversation, I'd write it down, and then actively look for situations and opportunities that I could use it in my own speech. And then that repetition, hearing it, seeing it, using it, repeating it naturally, that's what really worked for me. And that's what works for many of my students too. So over time, I developed a system to help myself and also my students to do exactly that. Learn vocabulary in context, practice it immediately, and reinforce it through natural repetition. So I'm really confident that I can help you with that. And through my own efforts of my master's degree, and I studied how people learn languages effectively. And my education really gave me that deep understanding of why traditional methods like memorizing long lists don't work and what does. And I've been where you are. I know what it's like to struggle with speaking, overthink every word, and just generally feel stuck. That experience has really allowed me to connect with my own students because I've been there before. I know exactly what it's like. And over the past few years, I've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of students to achieve breakthrough with their English fluency. So whether that's professionals giving presentations, or if you're looking for a new job and you have an interview, my methods have really helped and been tested in the real world. So I don't just teach the theory. What I'm sharing with, it's not just theory, it's really the tools that you can apply immediately. So really to help you build confidence, use vocabulary naturally, and communicate effectively. Whether that's in a casual conversation or if it's a high-pressured situation like a negotiation or a meeting, for example. So I know, let me see, we have any questions. Okay, perfect. So I know how it can be so frustrating when it comes to language learning and vocabulary. And there's a big thing of there's a gap between knowing the words. I've learned the vocabulary, I know the language, but also having the confidence to use them fluently. This gap can be so frustrating, especially when you have the knowledge, you have the language, but you hesitate to express yourself in real situations. And that's honestly why I created the VIP 10-day sprint to fluent vocabulary. And the goal is really to have a focused, high-impact program designed to bridge that gap of giving you the tools, strategies, and confidence to use English naturally and effectively. So whether it's in professional situations, social conversations, or high-pressured moments, the sprint is about helping you to achieve real results, memorable progress in just 10 days. And the really great thing is that you will be working with me directly. I know a few of you who are already here, who've already joined. I'm very excited to get started with you on Monday. And we'll be working together and we'll have live sessions. There's going to be a total of 9 hours of sessions with me. And you'll get the strategies, the resources, and feedback from me to unlock your fluency. So within the sprint, you will get personalized feedback from me, and you will get to practice in real time. So one thing I said is you have the language, but you want to be able to learn it and then use it immediately. And that's exactly what you can do in the sprint with me. So you will also get to practice in real time, and it will help you to break through that hesitation and build your confidence because you can have the language. So I actually have worked with native speakers and those that are at a very advanced level before. And you might be thinking, well, why do they need to work with you if they're already really advanced? And the reason is because you can have all of the language, but it's about, can you use it confidently in any situation? And that's where it's important to get the confidence built to, and also the personalized feedback, because it's, am I really saying this the right way? How does this come across? And you might start to question everything that you're saying. And that's the same if in your first language as well. So I've put together the 10-day sprint where you'll have over 9 hours of live sessions with me. You will also receive my proven frameworks for mastering vocabulary and fluency, and they will be delivered in actionable, daily, easy to follow steps for 10 days. So this will stop you from wasting time on ineffective methods and really focus on what works so you can see real results. Also, as a bonus, I'm going to be sharing an exclusive phrasal verb ebook, vocabulary guides, and different worksheets to help with your learning. You'll also have lifetime access to the tools that simplify complex topics and help you to practice on your own terms as well. Now, it is 10 days, but you do get lifetime access to all of the content. So if you think, oh, I'm quite busy over those 10 days, I don't think I'll be able to do everything, don't worry, you will have access to everything after we finish as well. So as I've shared today, one really important thing is it's not about learning new words, but also the context of the language you're learning. So in the sprint, you'll learn how to use vocabulary naturally in professional and everyday situations, so you sound confident and fluent. Plus, if you can't attend the live sessions, don't worry, you won't miss anything. The sessions will be recorded, and you will get access to the content anytime to really reinforce the learning as well. And there's different quizzes and things to help you to consolidate your learning and follow the strategies that I've shared with you today. So whether you're preparing for a high stakes presentation, or if you're trying to navigate professional conversations, or simply looking to just feel more natural and fluent when speaking, this is a great program for you. So each session will build on expanding your vocabulary in context so you can use it effortlessly. It will also help you to build confidence in real-time speaking situations, and you will get feedback from me as well. And also to address your personal challenges with different strategies of how to handle different situations as well. So I'm going to share the link with you in the comments section. If you do have any questions about it, do let me know. But I also wanted to let you know the VIP Sprint experience is very limited. There's only another 24 hours or so left to join. And that's because we kick off our first live session this Monday. So this 10-day program is designed to help you achieve measurable progress just in time for the holidays, so you can then relax and celebrate and feel proud of your incredible results that you've achieved during these few days together. Also, as part of the sprint, you'll get different insights to address specific challenges and really accelerate your progress. So for this round, I also have something really exciting to share as well. When you join, and for those that you have already joined, you will get this as well. So this is the first time you're hearing this, but you'll also receive a private coaching session with me, and that's valued at over $200. So I'm really excited for those that join by the closing date for this round. Those that have already joined will get this as well. You'll get a one-on-one session live with me as well. So, and the reason for that is because having that live session, I can really help you with your unique challenges. We can refine your skills together, set clear goals, and I can give you that guidance and assistance. So I'm really excited to be able to offer that as well. Now, many learners know words. They have the vocabulary, but they struggle to use them naturally in conversations and in especially high-pressured situations. Even if you are fluent, when you think about even if you are using English quite frequently, when it comes to particular situations, you can feel very nervous without that support and without feeling confident with the vocabulary. So in the sprint, I'll work with you to bridge that gap by practicing vocabulary in real-world situations. So you'll not only learn the words, if you don't know them, but also how to master them to use them effectively. So generic resources don't address that individual need. And learners often reach this particular, what I would say, a plateau. They reach this level. And the reason for that is because they're not getting tailored feedback for their specific challenges. In the sprint, you'll get live coaching, personalized feedback. We'll have over 9 hours of live coaching with me, and we'll really be able to focus on your unique struggles and accelerate your fluency. So you might be wondering, well, I don't know if this is for me, my level, who is it for? Now, the sprint is for those that have at least an intermediate level of English. So if you're a beginner, this isn't for you. It's for intermediate or advanced learners of English who you already know the basics of English, but you want to really take it to that next level of fluency. It's also for professionals who need to communicate confidently in meetings, presentations, or other high-pressured situations. And also learners who are just tired of memorizing vocabulary lists and want to focus on real English, real world application. And really anyone that's ready to build a strong career-ready vocabulary and sound natural in professional and everyday conversations. So this isn't for you if you are a beginner. If you are still focused on foundational grammar or basic vocabulary, this sprint may feel too advanced for you. It's also not for those that are looking for a grammar-focused course. We do touch a little bit on how to use vocabulary and language correctly, but the main focus is on building your fluency and learning how to use English naturally and effectively. So it's not a grammar course, and really it's not for anyone that's looking to actively participate. So the VIP sprint is for those that are looking to really show up and practice and apply what you learn to see real results. Okay, let me know if you have any questions, but today we've talked about powerful strategies to build your vocabulary and gain confidence. I know it's hard to take what you've learned and apply. It's especially hard to apply it consistently without the right support. But that's exactly why I created the sprint. So you don't have to do this alone. I can be here to support you, and having that personalized feedback, daily live sessions, just clear strategies tailored to your needs. That's what the sprint offers. So it's a focused, guided approach to help you achieve measurable results in just 10 days. And if this resonates with you, I'd love to see you inside. Enrollment is open until Friday, so just tomorrow, and the spaces are limited. So don't wait if this is something that you're looking for. Now, we start our first live session on Monday. Enrollment is open until Friday at midnight in the UK. So don't wait. Spaces are also limited, and I'd hate for you to miss out on this opportunity to really transform your English and work together so closely. Also, like I said, for those that join within the next 24 hours for this round, we'll also get an exclusive one-on-one session with me as well. So I'm really excited to meet you and have a good conversation with you together as well. If you have any questions or you aren't sure if the sprint is for you, feel free to reach out. I'm going to be here and happy to help. But yeah, let's make the moment where speaking English fluency it's your time to do that now. So I can't wait to see you inside. I will see you there very soon. Thanks for joining today. Bye.